If you want to be smarter, more confident, more attractive, this is one of the most overlooked ways to do it. And almost no one is paying attention to it. Because the hobbies you choose aren't just things you do for fun. They are shaping how you think, how you show up, and who you're becoming. So in this video, I am going to walk you through a set of hobbies that have very real, very tangible benefits, and a few of them might surprise you. Before we get into the list, I want you to tell me in the comments, what is a hobby that you genuinely love or one that you would love to get into? I am always curious what people are drawn to. All right, now let's get into it. One of the most powerful hobbies that you can pick up and one that pays off almost immediately is learning a second language. Now, on the surface, this one is obvious. Yes, it makes you smarter. There's a lot of research on this. People who speak more than one language tend to have better memory, better cognitive flexibility, even a lower risk of cognitive decline later in life. But that's not actually the most interesting part. What is more interesting is what it does to your identity. Because the moment that you start speaking in another language, you start to feel different. You're no longer just operating in your default environment. You're someone who can step into a different culture, a different conversation, a different version of yourself. And I have been learning French for a while now, so sometimes I will actually catch myself thinking, en fait, ça change complètement la façon dont tu te vois. Actually, it completely changes how you see yourself. And it's true, because by learning a new language, you are expanding your range as a person. And what I've noticed, especially as you get more comfortable with a new language, is that you stop hesitating as much. At the beginning, you are very, very aware of yourself. You're thinking about every word. But over time, you start responding more naturally. You trust yourself more. And that confidence doesn't just stay contained to the language. Also, just practically speaking, it makes you a much more interesting person. There's a difference between I've been busy with work and I've been learning French and trying to keep up in actual conversations. One of those is fine. The other one tends to hold people's attention a bit longer. So yes, this hobby will make you smarter, but more importantly, it expands your world and how you see yourself inside it. C'est une autre version de toi, en fait. It's another version of you, really. Now, another hobby that works in a completely different way, but is just as powerful is this: golf. And honestly, a few other similar sports fall into this category too, but golf is a really good example. Now, I know golf has a bit of a reputation. Some people think it's slow. Some people think it's boring. And then there's a whole other group of people who are quietly obsessed with it, like me. And once you start playing, you understand why. On the surface, yes, this is one of those hobbies that tends to exist in certain environments. You're outside, you're walking for hours, and you're often around interesting, high-performing people. It's social, but not in a forced way. And you see a version of this in other sports too, like tennis, pickleball, all things where there's a mix of skill and social interaction. But what it actually trains is composure, because golf will expose you very quickly. You can hit a great shot and then completely mess up the next one. You can feel confident 1 minute and then slightly unravel the next minute, and you don't get to hide from that. When I started learning how to play, I didn't see myself as someone who plays golf at all. I didn't grow up playing sports. I didn't have that identity. And there's a moment, especially early on, where you feel very aware of yourself. You're at the range or on the course, and there's that subtle thought, do I actually belong here? And I made a very conscious decision early on to show up like I did, to take the lessons, invest in it, practice regularly, because all of those actions and decisions allowed me to show up like this is who I am now. And that's where the real shift happens, because at some point, it's not about the sport anymore. It's about becoming someone who can stay steady, even when things are not going your way, which, as it turns out, is most of life. Also, golf is one of the fastest ways to be humbled on a regular basis, which is probably useful. So yes, it's social, it's active, it's a bit aspirational, but most importantly, it builds a kind of calm, grounded confidence that's very hard to fake. Now, if that one works more on your composure, this next one works directly on how you think. Reading. Now, a lot of people read and it doesn't change anything. They finish the book, they think, oh yeah, that was interesting, and then they go right back to thinking the same way that they did before. There are lots of benefits to making reading one of your hobbies. Yes, it makes you smarter. You are absolutely exposed to new ideas, new frameworks, different ways of seeing things. And then over time, that compounds. It also makes you a more interesting person to talk to because you have something substantial to talk about. Another benefit of reading is much more subtle. It changes the voice in your head, because most people don't realize the quality of your thinking is not fixed. It's influenced constantly by what you're consuming. And this is something that I have been very intentional about for years. Not just reading more, but reading better. Books that actually stretch how I think, not just reinforce what I already believe. In fact, I just made a video where I break down 21 books that genuinely changed how I think and the core ideas from each one. I also made a video about how important it is to upgrade your inputs when you're on a journey of reinventing yourself. And yes, reading is definitely one of those key inputs. So if you are someone who wants to be more intentional with what you're reading, those two videos are a really good place to start. I will link them up here and also down below in the description. So yes, reading can absolutely make you smarter. And more importantly, it upgrades your thinking, and that changes everything downstream. And actually, I would love to hear if there is one book that changed how you think. I am always curious about that, so let me know in the comments. Now, this next one builds a completely different kind of intelligence, and it's one that most people don't have a lot of experience with: learning to play an instrument. This is one of those hobbies that a lot of people like the idea of, but don't actually stick with. Because at the beginning, it's not very rewarding. You're slow, you're a bit awkward, it doesn't sound great, and there's a very strong temptation to quit early. But playing an instrument is definitely something that can make you much more interesting. This is not something that I can claim myself. I have tried a few times when I was younger. I did take piano lessons for a while, but I never really felt the joy doing it, so I gave it up after a while. I do kind of wish that I had tried out some different instruments or maybe stuck with piano a little longer, but I definitely find it magnetic when I meet someone who can play a musical instrument. I think learning to play an instrument teaches you how to stay with something long enough to get good, which is a very rare experience. Because the truth is, most of us spend our time in things that we are already comfortable with. But with an instrument, by definition, you have to do something uncomfortable in the beginning, just like, many of the other hobbies that we've talked about so far, like languages and golf. Progress is slow, it's incremental. Sometimes it's almost invisible. And then, over time, something shifts. You realize that you are no longer the person who gives up early. You are someone who can tolerate the middle, the part where you're not any good yet, but you keep going anyway, which, to be honest, is where most valuable things in life actually live. So yes, playing a musical instrument, it's creative, it's expressive, it's definitely impressive. But more than that, it builds patience and discipline and a kind of quiet persistence that carries into everything else. Now, this next one is a bit more practical, but just as powerful in a different way: cooking. And I don't mean just getting food on the table. I mean learning how to cook well. Because a lot of people treat cooking as a chore, something to just get through, something to outsource, something to do as quickly as possible. But when you actually learn how to cook, even at a fairly simple level, it becomes something else entirely. It's attractive. It's social. It changes how you host, how you eat, how you spend your evenings. But the real shift is more subtle. It raises your standards, not just in food, but in how you live. And I've noticed this in my own life. A little while ago, I decided to get really intentional about mastering a few signature dishes that I make really well, like a proper coq au vin and flourless chocolate cake, and my own chili recipe that I have perfected over the years. And I really love approaching cooking like this because when you start paying attention to ingredients, to how something is prepared, and you're experimenting to find just the right way to poach an egg or cook a steak, you're no longer just consuming whatever is easiest. You're creating something. And that shifts your relationship with your day-to-day life. You start to build small rituals, the way you prepare a meal, the way you set a table, the way you slow things down even slightly. And those things add up. Also, being someone who can just casually make a really good meal is a very underrated form of competence. So yes, it's practical, but more than that, it shifts you from reacting to your life to curating and shaping it. Now, before we go on to hobby number 6, just quick pause for a second. If you are watching this and thinking, okay, I know I want something to shift, but you can also see how easy it is to fall back into the same patterns. That's exactly where most people get stuck. So I put together a free guide called the Self-Sabotage Recovery Guide. It walks you through those patterns that quietly keep so many people stuck and stop you from making changes like the ones that I've been talking about, like adopting some new hobbies or new standards for your life. And the guide shows you how to start getting out of your own way. So I will link it below if you want to grab it again for free. All right, let's keep going. The next hobby that I want to talk about is writing. And this can be journaling or it can be more structured writing. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're putting your thoughts somewhere that you can actually see them. Because most people are walking around with a constant stream of thought in their head and they never really stop to examine them. They just react to them. Writing gives you clarity. You can think more clearly. You can articulate things better. You can make better decisions. And this is one that has been very real for me. So I've been journaling for years, consistently. Like I have stacks of journals. And it's one of those habits that seems simple, but compounds in a very powerful way over time. Because the real benefit is this. It shows you your patterns. And once you can see your patterns, you can actually change them. A lot of what keeps people stuck isn't a lack of knowledge. It's the same loops, the same thoughts, the same reactions, the same stories about who they are and what they can do. And those are very hard to shift when they're just in your head. And honestly, even writing my first nonfiction book, which is coming out soon, has reinforced this even more. Because when you're writing at that level, you can't stay vague. You have to get really clear on what you actually think, what you actually believe. And that's what writing does. It creates distance. You can see what you're thinking instead of being just completely inside it. And that's where change starts. Also, sometimes you write something down and immediately realize, oh, that's the story I've been running. And it's not nearly as convincing when you can actually see it. So yes, writing gives you clarity, but more than that, it helps you to get out of your own way. Now, this next one takes that internal clarity and puts it out into the world. Public speaking, or even just creating content online. This is one that a lot of people instinctively avoid. I think we have all heard the stat about how people fear public speaking more than death, which just shows how primal this fear can be. With public speaking, you're visible, you're being evaluated, you're vulnerable to judgment and rejection and humiliation. And yes, those do sound like bad things, but just stick with me for a sec because there are a whole lot of benefits to pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and doing more public speaking. One of the benefits is that you become more confident. I talk about this a lot in other videos that it's not about waiting to become more confident so that you can then do scary things like speaking. When you do the scary things and prove to yourself that you can handle it, even when it doesn't go all that great at first, that's the stuff that gives you more confidence. Confidence is a result, not a prerequisite. And more than that, when you make a decision to do some public speaking, what it actually does is force an identity shift. Because you cannot keep seeing yourself as, I'm not really that kind of person, and also put yourself out there. At some point, something has to change. Either you hold back or you expand. And this hobby doesn't really let you stay in the middle. This is something that I have experienced very directly, putting myself on YouTube, speaking regularly, and more recently doing my TEDx talk. Those are not things that I would have naturally seen myself doing years ago, but the act of doing them changes you. You get more comfortable expressing your ideas. You trust your voice more. You stop overthinking quite as much. And you start to see yourself differently. So yes, this hobby builds confidence and visibility. But more than that, it expands what you believe you're capable of. Now, this next one works in almost the opposite way. It's much quieter, but just as powerful. Yoga or Pilates. So some of the obvious benefits of something like yoga or Pilates are the changes to your physical presence, your posture, your movement, the way that you carry yourself. There's a certain kind of calm, grounded energy that comes with it. And as you practice consistently, what it's really doing is regulating your nervous system, and that affects everything. This has been a constant in my life for a very long time. I started doing yoga back in medical school, mostly as a way to manage stress. And it stayed with me through different phases. So during pregnancy with regular prenatal yoga, and then later it became a really important part of how I supported my body through an autoimmune illness. And what I have found is that it's not just about flexibility or strength. It's about how you respond to things. You become a bit less reactive, a bit more steady, a bit more aware of what is happening in your body, which in most situations is a useful upgrade. Because when your nervous system is more regulated, you make better decisions. You handle stress differently. You don't get pulled off track as easily. So yes, it changes how you look and move, but more importantly, it changes how you feel and how you respond to your life. Now, this next one expands things in a completely different direction. Travel. And I really do think travel can function as a hobby, not just an occasional holiday, but something that you intentionally value and build into your life. Because travel gives you things that are hard to get any other way. Perspective, novelty, energy. It wakes you up a bit. You notice more. You become more curious. And then you come back with fresh eyes. It also makes you much more interesting. You have stories and experiences and a broader sense of the world. And that tends to come through in conversation, in confidence, and in how you relate to people. Travel has enriched my own life enormously. After graduating from medical school, I backpacked solo around Europe for several weeks, which was such a formative experience. Later, my husband and I did a lot of travel before we had kids. We went to Thailand, Hong Kong, we went on an African safari. And now, in this season of life, we have created second homes for ourselves in France and London. So travel has become woven into how we live. We actually share some of that on our vlog channel as well, our travels and this slightly bi-continental lifestyle that we're in the process of building. So yes, travel can be fun and beautiful, but it's also energizing and enriching and one of the best ways to keep life feeling expansive. And you also get very good at figuring things out on the fly, which is a useful skill in general. Now, this last one brings things back in slightly, but sharpens how you think in a very precise way. Learning a precision-based skill. So this could be something like photography or chess, or learning how to edit video, or playing cards strategically, even something like calligraphy or design, or anything that requires detail and concentration. So these hobbies train a kind of focus that a lot of people are losing. You have to pay attention. You have to slow down. You have to notice small things, and that alone is valuable. They also sharpen how you think, how you start recognizing patterns and thinking ahead and making small adjustments. You become more observant and more mentally engaged. And in a world where so much is fast and distracted and surface level, there's something really powerful about developing depth of attention. Also, these hobbies are very humbling. They look easy right up until you try them. So yes, they can make you smarter, and they also keep your mind active and focused and sharp. Now, if you step back and look at all of these, there is a pattern. The real benefit of these hobbies isn't just that they make you smarter or more attractive. They make life richer. They keep you growing. They give you fresh energy, and they help you become a more engaged, interesting version of yourself. Now, maybe as you're watching this, part of you is thinking, okay, that all sounds great, but it also sounds like effort. Learning something new, starting as a beginner and sticking with it. And so maybe you're wondering whether you would actually stay motivated. So if that's you, I want you to watch this next video where I unpack everything you need to know about motivation and why you feel unmotivated. Because motivation is usually misunderstood. And once you understand what is really going on, change gets a lot easier. So I will link it on the next screen, and then I will see you there. Okay, sound good. Tea ready. Wait, too close. I don't want to knock it over. Okay. All right, let's roll.